Hey everybody, I'm Jammer, back again with another Mario Kart 8 Deluxe video. Today we're going to be going over some of the best kart setups for battling. First of all, just want to apologize that it's taken as long as it has to finally get around to actually doing this video. I got caught up with the frickin' ARMS Direct, then the Splatoon trailer, then all this stuff with the leaks this week, just getting prepped for E3. I just totally lost track of time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never did that video. So I finally decided, let's get around to it today. Let's finally take a look at some of the characters I think it's a great setup for battling, and arguably also for 200cc as well, because a lot of the stats that are important in battle are also very important in that mode as well. Before we begin, it's very critical that you watch my two videos, the weight class video that goes over all the weight classes for all the characters, and the kart stats as well, because that will be very important here, because I'm going to be talking about how characters are interchangeable with one another as well as karts. Like, for example, if I show a certain kart on screen, it might be also interchangeable with another kart that you could use. Same goes for, like, characters. So it's definitely important that you go watch those. Be sure to check them out. I'll put a link in the description, a card above, all that fun stuff. Let's talk about the stats in general in case you guys need a quick refresher on what is what and what can help you where. And I'll talk about what are the ones that are most important for this mode. So first being the speed stat, this is basically the top speed your character can reach. It isn't necessarily that important in this mode, just because you're not necessarily racing, obviously. It can be useful, especially in like Shine Thief, or just trying to escape someone's Bob-omb Blast or something like that. But it isn't something that we're going to be directly focusing on for these setups, unlike where you do in racing. The next stat is acceleration. This is the rate at which you achieve your top speed. This is one of the most important ones in battling because you are often hit with items in this mode. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's battle. What do you expect? So having the ability to recover from being hit and speeding up as fast as you can to get away from that danger area is very important. So a lot of the setups that we have here are going to be focusing on this stat. The next category is weight. Now this isn't as important here. All it affects is if you bump into another player, the one with the more weight will send the lighter one aside. So for example, if someone's playing as Wario and bumps into a baby Luigi, he's going to be sent flying. Weight's always important, don't get me wrong, because you're always bound to hit into somebody, so it's definitely helpful to keep yourself in control if you ever get hit by someone. But it's really not super important for focusing on here in this mode. The next stat is handling. Now this is a very critical stat for battle mode, not only battle mode, but 200cc as well. In battle mode, you will be taking tight turns and you'll be trying to navigate around to grab certain things, like for example in coin runners, trying to line up your cart perfectly to grab all the coins you can, just stuff like that. So it's very important that handling is as high as possible. It's this stat and acceleration that we will be focusing on the most in this video to try to get the most optimized setups for those two stats. Finally, the last stat is traction. This helps when driving off the course to maintain your speed, and it helps on courses that are more like dirt roads. There aren't as many battle mode arenas that have a dirt floor area, so again, just like racing, this isn't the biggest thing to concern. Of course, it still can be helpful, but in the end, you really won't be going off the course that often. Perhaps sometimes to like maybe take a quick shortcut with a shine or whatever, but usually you'll have a mushroom to zoom through there anyways, and it won't make much of a difference. So let's get into some of the kart setups. There are a wide variety that can totally work here in this mode, for sure. And rather than being on the heavy side of the spectrum like the racing was, because obviously that's optimized for speed, this is actually going to be at the upper class of the light characters and then the lower part of the medium characters. These characters are pretty well balanced, but also have a good boost to their acceleration and handling, so this is where we're going to be focusing a lot of our setups. The first one is in the female light category, so you could use Wendy, Toadette, or Isabelle. The setup here, honestly, is a standard kart, standard wheels, but with a parafoil glider that gives that boost to acceleration. The key stats here are, of course, the handling acceleration, like I previously mentioned, with a 4.5 acceleration, 4.25 handling. It does take a huge hit to the speed, which can be kind of concerning, and that's why I feel like some of the setups later in this list are a little bit better, just because a 2.5 speed is going to be very slow. It might not even be worth it for the boost in the acceleration here. I might even swap it out and maybe give him a weight glider instead, so then the speed at least goes back to 2.75. And the acceleration drops down to 4.25. This is still an okay setup, but like I said, as you'll see later in this list, there probably are better setups to use, but I think this can still be pretty viable. The next setup is using the speedy class of characters, which can be Toad, Shy Guy, or Larry. With this setup, I have them using the Pipe, the Slim, and the Weight Glider. Key stats to look at here are, again, the handling and the acceleration. Handling actually being at a whopping 5, which is going to be actually the biggest one I have on this list, which is awesome. This is actually, I think, one of my favorites on the list because of that huge boost to handling, and the acceleration is really great as well. You could swap out the character for a male light instead of a speedy, with an even more of a drop to your speed, but even more of a boost to your handling if you really want. I don't know if I'd recommend it necessarily, because dropping down lower speed to even more than you already have here might not be worth it for the 0.25 boost to the handling, but that's really up to you. Okay, so the next setup I have is using a female alt character. This is our first in the medium tier class of characters. Very similar to the build before. The biggest changes here, a little bit lower handling by 0.25, but a little bit more acceleration by 0.25. So like I said, very similar to the one before it. It's really what it comes down to is you think handling is more important than acceleration. I think the 0.25 difference in acceleration is going to be helpful, but maybe not as helpful as the handling per se, just because the 0.25 could give you just enough to get around a certain corner or navigate a certain hallway. Granted, I mean, handling really all comes down to if you're experienced enough with the game and you're used to a certain control style with the handling and whatnot. I mean, you can get away with navigating almost anything, but boost in handling will always be helpful, especially when you're at a stop and you're trying to turn around or just like do a quick flip around while you're driving by. So these two setups, the one before and this one, are very similar, and it's really a matter of preference, like a lot of this list. Alright, the next setup I have is the male alts, using the Cat Cruiser, standard tires, and a parafoil glider. The parafoil gliders are known for having the boost to acceleration, but minusing speed and traction. Again, the key stats here are the acceleration and the handling, but you still get a pretty good amount of speed being at a solid 3, which is nice. The setups I mentioned previously might be worth better just because their handling stats are all better and their acceleration around the same anyways. And the 0.25 change in speed isn't the biggest difference, obviously. But the thing to look at here is the big jump in weight between the previous setups I mentioned and this one. Like I said, it can be helpful, but obviously it's not something they entirely focus on. So again, it's really up to the user choice here. The next setup we have here is again with the male alts, instead this time using the Pipe, the Slim, and another parafoil glider. Like the last one and this one, you could really swap out the parafoil glider for a weight glider, get a boost to the speed, and then your acceleration drops a little bit. It's really up to you. However, with this setup, I think it works better with the parafoil because you still have the solid 4 acceleration, which is nice. You can drop below, it's not a big deal, but you really want to make sure that's your most important, one of your more important stats, and of course, all the other stats are very similar to that previous setup. The biggest difference here being 0.5 more handling, which I think is definitely worth it, taking a little bit of a hit to the acceleration to get a bigger boost to your handling. The final setup is using the female alts. This consists of like Cat Peach, Female Villager, and Female Inkling. Again, very similar to one before it, like the only difference being the 0.25 boost to the handling, but your weight does drop by 0.5 and you get 0.5 more traction. So between these two setups, it's very difficult to say which one is better, to be honest. Because I mean, that 0.25 handling will definitely help to get 4.75, which is phenomenal. Granted, we did talk about a while back saying the female alts having nearly the same stats with the minor tweaks of a little bit more speed on this side, but a little bit less acceleration, everything else being exactly equal. I think it's almost worth it to have a little bit more of a boost to speed, because like I said, it can be important sometimes to use that speed just to get away from danger areas, run away with the shine quicker. Acceleration is good, but once you're up to your top speed, acceleration isn't going to help you anymore, obviously. Yes, you do get hit quite often in battle mode, but again, I think the most important things here are the handling, so you can avoid shells and bananas and everything like that, grab coins easier, and then be able to turn around to try to grab a shine. So yeah, those are some of my favorite setups for battle mode in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Honestly, some of the just standard, or maybe just switching out the parafoil for a little bit boosted acceleration, you know, those are honestly all viable for classes female light, male light, speedy, female alt, and male alts. I would probably skip low mediums just for the fact that the only difference between those two is a weight stat. so might as well just get a little bit more weight using the male alts, to be honest. You could still use, you know, Yoshi and whatnot, but you'll just have a little bit more weight. And again, like I've said previously, it's not the biggest deal in this mode. When talking about 200cc, there's definitely going to be some changes here. But again, a lot of these setups will work there. I could do a future video later talking about 200cc builds if you guys want me to. Again, you'll see a lot of similar things from this video, but we'll be focusing a lot more on speed and weight and making sure those are still high and good enough but again, the main focus will always be acceleration and handling for these two modes. But yeah, like I said, you could really use any characters and even their standard setups in those specific classes. But in the end, any character can really work in this mode. I just think these are some of the better choices just because of those important boosts to their stats in handling and acceleration. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comments, what characters do you like to use for battle? What setups do you like to use? Are some on the list what I maybe mentioned very similar to what you use, or maybe you found something even better? Yeah, definitely let me know in the comments. Give this video a huge, awesome like, and if you haven't already, subscribe for tons on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Nintendo Switch, and E3 2017 coverage, as well as live streams throughout this next weekend over the ARMS Test Punch demo. I don't know the times for when they're going to be doing it yet, to be truly honest, but I'll more than likely be streaming all 3 days, or if I don't, I'll do at least a few of the days. It just really depends on the timing of it all and how it's going to be running and operating. But definitely expect tons of coverage on that throughout this next week. And yeah, thanks again so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!